Well, welcome back to Mr. Obsolete's Vintage Homesteading. Today's exciting video, the vintage stuff, is how I sort of became a vintage chainsaw collector, and how over time I actually became a real saw collector. So 1980 I bought my first saw. We just moved to a place that had acreage and trees, had a fireplace, so I bought a ProMac 610. It's a 1980 model. I was 2 years old when I got it. Bought it for 35 bucks at an estate sale. I talked about it quite a bit in other videos, and plus I use these in many of my videos because they're the most used saws that I have. So anyway, I say it's a 60cc, and it's not a, even though it says ProMac on it, it's not a pro saw. It's actually a heavy-duty farm saw, and these things have just outlasted any other saws I've had. They're powerful and fast cutting, simple to work on, easy maintenance. Even though they haven't made them since '99, parts availability is still quite good. They made so many of them. This single model was the largest selling single model chainsaw ever made in the US. They made it from 1976 until 1999, virtually unchanged. That's part of the reason why McCulloch went out of business. After they got bought out by Black & Decker, they never put any money into research and development. And when Robert McCulloch was running a corporation, he did two things. He was a genius inventor and a genius marketer. And so McCulloch started in 1947. Within a few years they bypassed almost every other brand, became the largest seller ever. So anyway, like I say, these are the most used saws that I have, and I explained the reasons why. So the next saws I'm going to show you are basically just a basic same theme, and they made these in a few different displacements, 54, 57, and 60cc. So this is a Montgomery Ward's version of it. I've had this in a lot of my videos. Same specifications exactly. And the thing that about collecting saws originally, these were just old saws. They were not really worth anything, and there weren't any collectors around, so my collection could not hardly be duplicated today for the small amount of investment I have in them, because there's a lot of collectors, and the really good stuff's all been hogged up by the big time collectors. So anyway, this one was $5. Been on the farm here at least 35 years, still cutting away. This one is a Timber Bear. See the logo on there, bear, nice script on it and whatnot. This we got from our neighbors for 10 bucks, and it was really filthy and a few broken pieces on it and whatnot. But you know, for 10 bucks, hey, good as a part saw, but really hadn't had much use, so I was able to put it into spiffy condition. You see I'm running a 24-inch bar. It's only a 54cc saw. So this is one of the very last ones made. Right down in the handle here it said made in Mexico. And McCulloch had gotten into bad financial problems towards the end of their tenure there, which was 1999, and they owed a lot of money to debtors for outside supplying of parts and whatnot. But they built a brand new state-of-the-art plant in Mexico. They started production in there, and I've not ever been able to find out how long it was, but I'm guessing maybe 2 or 3 months. The creditors pulled the funding out from under and collapsed them overnight. So these are probably fairly rare for the last year. I think they made these from 1990 to 1999. The only thing that they did on them, the basic design of the saw goes back to about 1967 for the power head. was used in many different models of the saws, different chassis, but the power plant was pretty much identical. And at the last, to cheapen them up, they cheapened up the starter parts. The plastic in them was made out of crappy material, and so these have a reputation for the starters failing. And I just did a recent video on how to fix them and talked about it, so go back and watch our older videos. Now this was kind of a unique find. I think I got this about probably a year after McCulloch went out of business, 2000. I had this little pamphlet. It was called Little Nickel Ads, and it said they had this saw for sale for 75 bucks. And so it was like a 7-minute drive from the house, which was ideal. So I decided to go over and snarf it up. And when I talked to the lady, she says, well, you're going to have to meet me at a certain time at about 2 blocks from the house, because I don't want my dad to see me selling it. And so the story was that, you know, he'd never had a chainsaw, and they lived right in town, but he wanted one really bad, so he went and bought this thing. And he'd sneak out in the garage if he thought nobody was around. He'd get ready to start it because he put gas and oil and chainsaw bar oil in it. But I don't know if he ever started it or not. I couldn't find any signs of it. But anyway, she snuck it out and I bought it. So here you're looking at a brand new old stock 1999 Timber Bear, assembled in Mexico. Even the bar has a nice Timber Bear logo on it and whatnot. You can see the name right here. Oops. But anyway, that was quite a find. And interesting enough, this is probably the most expensive McCulloch I've ever gotten out of all my McCullochs I've collected. So the only thing I can really see wrong with it is that this decal's shriveling up a little bit. But and the other thing I can't understand is that, you know, they had a standard color of yellow and black on these, and so what the heck did they go to turd brown for? Is this a turd saw? No. Anyway. So I just take it to the shows and display it. I'll probably never use it. I have plenty of the other ones to fiddle around with. So my next most used saw, McCulloch-wise anyway, my Mini Mac, and I've had this in numerous videos. This is a 1975 model. I think the first ones were made in 1971. I bought this at a yard sale for the big price of 10 bucks. And the story behind it is kind of interesting because recently I saw a video from a guy that does a lot of chainsaw videos. And McCulloch's a lot of them. He likes McCulloch's real well. And he was talking about the Mini Macs. He said, well, the best thing to do with a Mini Mac is throw it in the garbage, because they're throwaway saws. And I think intentionally McCulloch made them that way in the beginning, because the companies made these little mini saws for using them around the yard and whatnot, and if you're in a housing development or something like that. But the thing is that almost every brand I've ever worked on has one thing in common: they're super finicky. So I can see why he would say, well, they belong in a garbage can. Well, what do I say about it? Yes and no. Yes, if you have no mechanical skills and deal with it like this guy did. You know, he had it, I know, I've had it probably 30 years, maybe, somewhere in there. But anyway, it had hardly been used because it would start up and run, but it wouldn't run consistently. So you go out to cut and then it'd quit, a temperature change, or things that affect these are the air temperature, how much fuel's in the tank, and the temperature. So, you know, you're always screwing around adjusting carburetors on them to make them work. But so for me, when I say no, I've been using this constantly for over 35 years. So should I throw it in the garbage? Absolutely not. So anyway, but the only upgrade or thing I've ever done to this is carburetor work, of course, and then I took off the safety chain and put on a regular chain. But other than just routine maintenance, this saw has been really good. But like I say, you have to have a screwdriver with you every time you go out and fiddle around with one, because you have a temp change or whatever, it's just not going to run good for you. So there again, the 610 series are my most used saws. Mini-Mac's my second most used saw. Here's the third most used saw. This is a ProMac 700. It's a 1977 model. And it's 70.5 cc. Now this one did not have a bar chain or anything like that on it when I got it. In fact, a buddy of mine, Goose, found it at a yard sale for 12 bucks and bought it, and he just gave it to me for the heck of it, see if I'd fix it or not, which I did. So I put a new bar chain, serviced it totally, rebuilt the fuel system and everything. So I got maybe about $125 in it. So if you went to buy a new Still or a Husky or something like that, a professional grade saw like this, you know, probably $1,700–1,800. And I saw a video the other day that they've had 3 price increases in the last 2 months, so they're probably even worse than that. So these are a super powerful saw, lightweight, and you know, got decompression valve and a lot of nice features on it. Starts very easily. Starts easier than the Mini-Mac. A little Mini-Mac, you really gotta pull it through. This thing just lights right off. There again, go back and I've got some older videos I show this in operation in different places, and you can see what an excellent fast cutter they are. So I'll move on to some different ones. This is a model 795 of 103 cc. This is the big block McCulloch motors. Started out at 80 cc, and the largest one was 123 cc in the SP125, which is still to this day considered the biggest, most powerful saw in the market. Still came out with a MS81 that finally achieved the same output and stuff, but it only took them 50 years to catch up to McCulloch. So these things are big and powerful. It took a real mountain man to run one of these all day long. And it's got some interesting features. It's got a decompression valve right here, which a lot of the big McCullochs did not have. And the reason this saw wasn't used a whole lot is McCulloch made a few mistakes over the years. One of them, they made their own carburetor, and it wasn't very good. So it doesn't have a choke on it. It has a primer. And those primers go bad, there's no way to service them. Primer button. Anyway, they made a conversion kit to put a Tillotson HL on them. Made it perform better, start easier than everything else. But I like to put this saw out at the shows and tractor and engine shows, because that's where I ended up getting a lot of leads to pick up saws. You know, people would see that I would actually fix this stuff up and demonstrate them, and so, hey, I got my dad's old saw laying around here, you can have it, or here, how about 10 bucks or something, you know. So the main part of my collection of saws was not buying them, but were donations. And it was over a long period of time. I'm what's called an accumulator instead of a hog and spend big bucks and go out and buy somebody's big collection. So just a little bit here and there adds up over time. And one of my favorite stories on these big saws like this is an old-time logger told me about it. One of the shows, you can see they got a big gauze filter, big area and whatnot. Well, when they'd go out on a job in a bad weather in the fall like here, these things would get moisture condensation on them and they wouldn't start. So what they would do, they would take them off, start the saw up, and get it warmed up, and when it was, they'd shut it off and they'd throw the filters back on. And all the other guys with their big McCullochs would put their filters laying on here to dry them out, and then they'd go out and start cutting. So I thought that was kind of neat. Well, you know us, we like history. So the big block saws like this are why McCulloch was the king of the woods for so long. You know, they 77 I think was the last year they made a big commercial saw, the SP-125. And after that, the biggest saw it could be was a Super Pro or 850, and they were 82 cc's, but they made those for a long time, and those were a real favorite for the woods out here. The other thing on these big saws of any brand is that you don't see them a lot because they got used. They got used to death, and so when McCulloch went out of business, no parts really, unless you do had a good dealer around like we had. You could get stuff for a long time after they shut down. So anyway, we get this whole hog out of the way. Well, the 795 was made from 1971 to 77. But anyway, this is probably one of the worst saws that McCulloch ever made. It had a lot of problems. This is a model D36. It was made in 1958 and 59. It looks like most other saws, but you'll see that the recoil starter is in the middle of the case here instead of on the side. And the idea is you get a straight line pull on it, which is a good idea. But in practice, it didn't work worth crap. It'd get sawdust and junk in there and quit working. It has a little worm drive gear thing, and so you're taking them apart and constantly and cleaning them. And the other thing that was a real problem on them, they decided to make the chain oiler on them work off crankcase pressure. Instead of having a pump, they just had a check valve, and so apparently they didn't do their research on it, because the only time it would work is at high RPM and in warm weather when the oil was thin. So if it was a cold day, the oil was thick and the crankcase pressure wasn't enough to make it oil. And so this one, second year of production, they put a manual oiler on it right here. And the other thing too is it has a McCulloch flatback carburetor, which didn't work very good. And anyway, so just a lot of weird stuff on it. But this one was kind of a weird deal how I got it. I was actually looking on Fleabay and there was a saw in there I wanted, so I bought it, and the guy sent this instead of the one I ordered. And this one weighed like twice as much. It was a small saw that I ordered, but anyway, I told him and showed him pictures of it and stuff like that. He didn't want to be bothered shipping it back and paying the shipping back, so yeah, just go ahead and keep it. So I think I paid 35 bucks for it plus shipping, so I got about 50 bucks in it. But it's a very rare saw, like I say, 2 years only, and most of these got thrown away because of the bad design. So there you have it. That's how I became a vintage McCulloch Chainsaw Collector. And I have others that we'll do down the road sometime, but the McCullochs have always served me the best of any brand of saw I have. The seconds are Pioneers, and I never had a whole lot of home lights, but the XL12 and a bunch of those saws were really super good saws too, which I've talked about in older videos and done them on. So there again, I'll keep recommending, go back and watch our old videos. So anyway, vintage is best, even if this is not very good. We'll see you on the next exciting vintage video.